Okay guys, we are still trugging our way through the Armageddon box set. We've only done one video so far, which was the new Ork half track. In today's video, I thought I would try and tackle the boys for you guys. And my plan is to do a video where I paint up 3 different Ork boys. And basically each part of each one is completely different. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways to paint skin. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to paint metallics. Then I'm going to show you how to paint kind of evil suns red, bad moons yellow, and goth black. And then obviously the pants and boots are going to be in there as well, but not kind of different styles for different months. And then the idea is you just pick and choose which color you want for each thing. So hopefully this video will help quite a lot of people. So you can go for that skin tone, I like that metallic, and I like them to be goth. So I put those 3 things together and that will give me the Ork that I want. So it's a little bit of an ambitious video, so we'll see how it goes. Before I get into it though, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone there continues to support the channels in all the myriad of ways it is possible to do so, like watching the videos, making sure you drop comments if you have questions, liking the videos, and making sure you are subscribed. Those things cost you nothing, but they make a huge difference as to how many people see each video and how quickly the channel grows. So please do that. And anyone out there that of course goes the extra mile and supports over on Patreon, you guys are incredible. You keep the lights on, the cameras rolling. And there's a whole host of different reasons to be involved in the Patreon. We do extra videos, you get access to the podcast, private Discord server, and of course we do monthly giveaways to the patrons. So last month was a Mechanicum army, the month before was something else cool, who knows. But this month we are giving away an Armageddon box set. You can see that I have 2. This one is empty because it's my set that I'm currently working on. This one is completely sealed and full, and that will be won by one lucky patron who has signed up at any tier. So if you want a chance, check that out, linked below. Okay, without further ado, let's dive in and start painting orcs. Okay, so these are the 3 Ork boys from the new Armageddon box set that I'm going to use to represent the models for this video. Like I said, by the end of the video, you should have 3 different ways of painting Ork skin, 3 different ways of doing metallics, and then you should have a goth, a speed freak, and a bad moon scheme. So the first skin tone is the one that I use for my personal army, which is the more natural tone. Now, before I get into it, all the models were sprayed black, and then they were sprayed with a nice coat of grey cere, which I find is a really nice starting point for contrast painting. After that, we threw Plague Bearer flesh across all of the skin of this model. I know it's quite dark and I know it's quite kind of a swampy green, but like I said, this is the more, I think, realistic, more natural tone of Ork skin. Like if you like Indian in the cupboard and Ork, he would pop out and he would look more like this than he would like toxic green or anything, but that's obviously personal preference. Once the Plague Bearer flesh was fully dried, we'd put on a layer of Berserker Bloodshell. This was put on from my wet palette, so from pot to wet palette, so it was thin down with a small bit of water. And then from the palette to the miniature, and which obviously just got a lot of warmth into the green. Lots of nice kind of red shading in all the muscles and stuff, which is perfect for the beginning of the layering process. For the layering, we're going to start with Strachan Green. And this is where painting orcs, I think, is the most fun thing because they're so well defined physically that it's actually a real joy to layer them up. You can literally just follow all the awesome muscles around, layer up the high points, and leave the kind of bits between the muscles nice and dark and shaded. And before you know it, you'll have a fantastic result. And this is where that kind of pallid color really starts to shine through with the first of the 3 layering jobs. Now, I know this is quite an in-depth kind of skin. There's like 4 or 5 layers to it. I know it can seem like a lot, but it is like the thing that I'm deciding to focus on with my Ork army is I want the skin to look really nice and I can kind of rush through other bits and pieces. Do you know what I mean? So Ogre and Camo being the second layer job. And as you can see, I'm just going lighter and kind of more towards the higher points of the muscles with each coat. As if the kind of light is hitting them, it's getting a bit of shadow work in, and it's just making it look really nice. There's one more layer to go, which we were going to use very, very sparingly, and you will see that in a minute. But this skin tone, it's just so unorthodox. This is my own invention of an Ork skin. I say mine, I didn't invent the whole thing. I was on stream and I had a bunch of really incredible painters in my chat telling me that it should be this coat and then this coat and then this coat. So, but I'm the one who uses it, and I just think it looks really nice. Krieg Khaki being the last color we use. And as you can see, I'm going in with a very small brush. And I'm really taking my time with this, and it's a very small layer job. And I'd love to know, this is my personal favorite of the 3 skin tones. I would love to know what your favorite of the 3 skin tones is when we get to the end. Jump into the comment section, let me know. In fact, because I'm going to be going through this whole thing of different metallics and different cloths and different skins, Let me know in the comments which orc you would build. You know what I mean? I would use the second skin, and I would use the third metallic, and I would use, you know, the goth color scheme for the armor and go from there. But this is the first skin. I think it looks really, really cool. Big fan of it. Okay, the next one is, I think, the most traditional orc skin, the one that is kind of currently being used to represent normal orcs. So we start with a orc skin contrast, and we paint this across all of the skin, making sure not to miss any bits and pieces. This will be kind of the mid-tone. We'll have the really pallid one as the first one. This is like the mid one, and then we'll go for that kind of hyper moot green bright one for the last one, which is a bit more retro, but obviously modern orcs can look like that too and look really cool. Then we go into War Boss Green for the mid-tone. And once again, just like the previous one, we are hitting all of the muscles and leaving all of the shaded work between all the muscles nice and dark. And it's just the higher points of the muscles we want to hit with that War Boss Green. And then when we get to the face, it's so much fun going around the chin and highlighting the lips a little bit and those little pig noses and around those and leaving the lines nice and dark. Like I said, out of all the kind of different races to paint, I think orcs are the most fun in terms of skin tone to paint. At least that's what I've found. Let me know if you disagree and have any other opinions on that. But it definitely works for me. I definitely enjoy the process. The only problem is you have to do the process, you know, 60 to 100 times on boys for an army, which can be a little bit tedious. Okay, jumping up to a Skarsnik Green for the highlight color. And just like the previous one, we are just going to hit those muscles. But once again, aiming a little bit more for the higher points, less coverage, more shadow left behind. And this is more like the kind of box art green than the other two will be. And this is the second skin tone, ready to rock and roll. Once again, a nice scheme. I think it looks really nice. It's just not as nice as the first one, I think. That's just me. Now on to the third one, and we are going to go kind of radioactive. So we're going to start with a Corandris Green contrast paint and give the skin a full coat of this. Once again, making sure there's no white left behind or none of the grey here left behind, and any of the nooks and crannies or underneath the shoulder pad or anything like that. And originally I thought I would try and find a tone that sits between Corandris Green and Moot Green, and I thought Moot Green was going to be my final highlight. But I soon realized that that wasn't the case. There wasn't really a good color to go between. So I went straight from the Corandris Green contrast straight up to the Moot Green. And I was going to use the Moot Green as a mid-tone. And then I was going to push that color even brighter. Now there's nothing in the Games Workshop paint range that would pull this color into kind of like a brighter spectrum. But there is quite a famous paint that everybody uses in every scheme ever. Any video you watch online, doesn't matter what they're painting, eventually they'll break out the ice yellow from AK. So that's what I reached for when it came to the layering job for the orc for the highlight. Once again, going very sparingly. You can see me focusing on the skin here and the face. Like I said, those cheeks, the lips. Obviously his like eyebrows kind of go sharply along his temple into the points of his ears, which is a really nice highlight line. And yeah, this is ice yellow. It sits somewhere between a cream and a yellow and a green somehow. And it just works a treat for highlighting it. But this is the lightest coat of any coat on any of the skins I'm doing. This ice yellow is a very minimal amount. We are not trying to do like crazy amounts of coverage, or else it'll push the orc skin into like the kind of pale tones. And that's not what we're looking for. So just small brush strokes. But does act as a highlight. It does definitely make that skin that kind of retro toxic looking skin, and it looks really, really nice. So here are the three different orc skin tones side by side. You can see they are all very different. They all still read as orcs. They're all still really nice. Which one of the three would you pick? Now, for all mouths, all I do, it's very simple. I get some Volupus pink, and then I paint it into the mouth, covering all the teeth, all the gums, all that kind of bit like this. It's very simple. And then I just grab some Morghast bone, and then I very quickly layer up the teeth with that. It's one coat. You could do multiple coats if you so wished. Go into Ushabti Bone or Screaming Skull to highlight it again. And maybe if I was painting a war boss or something, I would do that. But for a simple orc boy, I'm just going to leave it there. Sorry about that blurred footage. Once you get in trying to paint some really small sections, the camera wants to focus anywhere but the small section you're trying to show off. Okay, time to start working up the 3 different metallics. So the first 2 are going to be fairly similar. So it starts with a solid coat of lead belcher, and we're going to make sure to get that across all the metallic parts of each model. So for instance, this guy has an axe head, a big armored shoulder pad, a bandolier of rounds across his chest, and obviously his pistol. He's also got the kind of stompy steel toe cap boots. After that metallic is fully dry, we then go in with null and oil and shade down the entire metallic surface. This will add that nice kind of oiled, slick look to the metallics. And if you're going for a more kind of neat and tidy looking orc army, which a lot of people do go for, then this is the way to do it. Because then all we do is go back to lead belcher and go with a little highlight on those colors again, making it look kind of sharp and a little bit brighter, but leaving that null and oil shaded behind. And it's quite a simple thing. And it doesn't read as amazing right now because there's too much of the rest of the model unpainted. But once the rest of the model is painted, the metallic does sit on it really nicely, as kind of simple and plain as it is. The next one is the same thing again. We're basically all the same steps, except we're swapping out the null and oil for an Agrax Earthshade. That will leave a very different look to the metallic. It's a look that I prefer when it comes to painting orcs. Their weapons are kind of ramshackled. They should seem a little bit more worn, a little bit more kind of degraded. These guys aren't sitting there polishing their weapons or their axes or their stuff like that. So, and I think Agrax Earthshade definitely shows all the kind of definition and the details of the weapons a little bit more than the null and oil does, and it sells it really nice. Then, like I said, these first 2 are very simple. The third one is, once again, my favorite. It's a very rusty technique. I'm going to show you how it works. It looks really fantastic, and when you throw the clan colors on top of it, I think it's the best result you can get. So I'll show you that now in a moment after we go back to lead belcher and just re-highlight this metallics. And as you can see, the silver over the Agrax Earthshaded metal, it highlights it really well, but still leaves that nice definition behind. So if you're going for a really quick way of painting and you want your metallics to look nice, this is the one that I would go for. If you can spare the time and you want to go the extra step, I think stage 3 is going to be really cool. It's a very similar rust technique to what I used on the Wartrike. We're just showing you how to do it on a smaller scaled miniature. Here's the metallic side by side, so you can see there is actually quite a bit of difference depending on what shade you use. So for the third one, we usually have to be a little bit more careful with this. If I was actually painting up a unit, I'd probably do the metallics first so that I can be a little bit sloppy and just paint over all the other bits. But because I wanted to start this video off with the skin, it means now I have to be super careful with this technique. So Rhinox hide, and I carefully paint on all the metallics with this, block them all in completely. So that means the belt buckle, his steel cap boots, his chop in his hand, his shooter, any other bits and pieces you can see that should be metallic. We're going to get a nice coat of the Rhinox hide. When that is fully dry, it's time to move over and make it rusty. So the first coat of paint we're going to attack it with is Ryza Rust. And all we're going to do is stipple this over those metallics or those brown sections to make them metallic. And that will start to sell the concept of it looking rusty. It's very quick. It's very effective. And you've seen I've grabbed a small dry brush, one of the Artis Opus ones, which has kind of like a point. So I can be a little bit more controlled with it. So I'm trying to avoid hitting the hand or the face or the shoulders or anything with any of the orange or silver paint, because that would be bad. Once the first layer is done, we move over to Fire Dragon Bright and we do another quick layer of stippling with that dry brush. Lighter again, it's basically like the highlight of it or the mid-tone. You don't have to apply very much, but the different tones of orange really help to sell it as rust. And after those 2 coats of orange are fully dry, we then move on to lead belcher and give all those metallics a nice light dry brush, capturing those sharp edges and showing the definition of all the metallics. But it just reads as really nice rust. So simple to do. If anyone else is watching this and they think like this is the kind of technique you just have in your back pocket whenever you need to paint rusty scenery or, you know, orc bikers or anything like that, this is a great technique to know because it's so quick, but it's so effective. You want to do rusty Necrons? There's the thing for you. Okay, with the rust on and the model looking fairly decent, I feel like obviously I'm putting the nicest of all the 3 versions on this one because that's the one I'm painting up for me. So Yeah. Okay, time to sell the 3 different orc clans. So for Goths, the first thing we're going to do is grab some Abaddon Black and do some kind of splotchy, scratchy layers onto the panels that you want to be black that are armor. So shoulder pad, any of the weapon panels or anything like that. If you decide you have a jacket on or a jumper on or a sweatshirt on or a t-shirt on for the orc boy and you want it to be black, at this point you would do a solid coat of Abaddon Black with that color. And that would sell it really well. On this, I'm going to go for the shoulder pad, the helmet, and a panel on his shooter to make it look like the Goth armor. Now, obviously, if you had something like a Mega Knob, you'd be using a lot more of this, but this is just a simple orc boy, so you don't have to go overboard and you don't have to put too much on. Once that is done, we move over to Corvus Black and do the same thing again, but just inside the previous color. So in the middle of the kind of black panels you've done already, we're going to add a little bit of Corvus Black, which will add an extra bit of definition to the black and just make it look really nice. Okay, with those bits done, we do go back to our trusty lead belcher. As you can see, we keep going back to that and do a very light dry brush over those black sections again. This is going to add a nice little bit of weathering and scratching to that and make it look really nice. So that's how I would do Goth armor when it comes to painting orc boys. For Bad Moons, we're going to hit it with yellow. We're going to start with a coat of Averlin Sunset. Now, we do have those 2 different steps like we were talking about in the previous one. So we are going to paint his t-shirt in yellow. And this is a more solid coat of yellow. We're not trying to stipple on it. We're not trying to do scratchiness or anything. We're just trying to get a nice solid block color of yellow. But then when we jump over to his armored shoulder pad, we're going to do exactly the same technique we did for the Goths before, which is basically aiming for kind of a scratchy highlight in the middle of the armor panel and leave the outside edges nice and metallic. It looks like worn metal. Obviously, orcs are not painters. They're not artisans. They're not going to sit there with a fine brush or anything like that and, you know, powder coat their armor panels, whatever. They're going to be fairly rough looking when it comes to the paint. So that's the kind of thing you're trying to get across. So after that Averlin Sunset is fully dried, it's time to jump up to Uriel Yellow and then just a very quick layer job. So inside that armor panel, like we said before, we're going for inside the previous yellow that we have done. Nice and scratchy and messy. Sells it really nice. This thing would look really well on, like I said, a Mega Knob or a War Boss or something, all those armor panels. And this yellow would look great. And then, of course, a normal, regular layer job with the t-shirt, just following the folds of the fabric and the lines and adding a very quick highlight to that. And can you guess what's next? That's right, back to lead belcher. And very quickly go over the shoulder pad and the little armored panel we put on the pistol in his hand as well. Not over the t-shirt, that can stay not metallic. And there we have a Bad Moon orc. And the third one, and the one that I'm doing for my personal army, is Speed Freaks. So we go in for Mephiston Red here, and we're aiming for the inside parts of the armor panel again. It reads so much better on the armor panels like this. And like I said, the whole idea is to mix and match. So if you really liked this rusty technique, but you wanted to do Bad Moons, you would just do this rusty technique, and then you would do Averlin Sunset and Flash Gets Yellow over the top, or Uriel Yellow over the top of that, like I'm doing with the reds here, and it was going to look absolutely fantastic. So please do remember, this is a mix and match video. You take the parts that you need and want to use and forget the rest. Evil's Sun Scarlet is used as the highlight then, once again aiming for the center parts of the red already applied, which is just going to make these sections pop and look really nice. And then we very quickly will go in with our lead belcher. I wonder how many times in this video I've said lead belcher. I'm guessing it's quite a few. And we once again go a light dry brush over the top of those metallics, just to once again add those scratches and stuff to the weapons. Now, there is, of course, a couple more generic steps to this video, but I'm not going to go into incredible detail on any of those because the video would be an hour long, and that's not what we are famed for here. So just so you know, we do use Black Templar contrast, and for this we added it to the boots, all the belts, all of the kind of wrist leather straps and garments and stuff like that. Got hit with a nice black coat. Any pistol grips or anything that are on show like the one here are going to get a coat of black as well. And then from here we jump up to Basilicanum Grey, And we threw Basilicanum Grey over all of their trousers. Nothing crazy. And we added things like if this guy's got a necklace, so there's a little tooth hanging off it, so we painted the tooth. He's got a bolt on one bit, so we painted a little bit of metallic on that. I threw some Berserker Bloodshade over the squig, mainly because I wasn't ready to paint it. I still don't know what color my squig's going to be. I layered up all those grey pants with a bit of Mechanicus Standard Grey. I didn't do anything else to the black. I just left it the contrast because that's all it needs to be. And then I based the models up. And the rules we have is this. Here is a standard Goth Orc boy. I think a whole army of this would look fairly sweet on the tabletop. Here is our Flash Kits. He is quite yellow. I'm not sure whether the yellow and this skin tone match particularly well, but I think if you mix and match, you'll get something that you're happy with. And then my personal favorite, and the one that actually goes directly into my army, is my Speed Freak with the more realistic skin. I'd love to know your thoughts and feelings on this style of video. I've never done anything like this before. Do you find it useful or helpful? Let me know in the comments, and please do let me know if you're planning to use this video. What combination of bits and pieces are you planning to do for your own orcs? Thank you guys so much for sticking around at the end of this video. Please do not forget to check out Patreon if you want to be with a chance of winning an Armageddon box set. And I look forward to giving you more Armageddon boxes or more Armageddon videos in the very near future.